Dean, welcome. Thanks for chatting with me today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
hmm So, you work with trauma and you're really into consciousness, from what I've
hmm
seen, to human consciousness. What led you to get involved with working with trauma, first of all?
Well, first of all, let me explain a little bit about what trauma is and what distinguishes a traumatic experience from just a stressful experience. Um, as humans, we are consciousness, and everything that we experience is consciousness. We process thoughts in order to have experiences, and that is um, the sole nature of our actual experience. Um, Everything that we experience comes to us in thought. We interpret every thought with an emotion. The emotion that the only emotion that there is our decision whether the thought that I'm processing at this moment feels good and I like it, or it doesn't feel good and I don't like it. If we don't like it, that's called stress. And stress is a spectrum. If you wake up in the morning and you're accustomed to having cream for your coffee and you're out of cream, that's a minor stressful event. But that notwithstanding, it is on the spectrum of stress. Traumas are the opposite end of that. They're the most significant um, event that we can experience, and the intensity, the interpretation of that intensity varies from person to person, depending on the condition that the person is in at the time that they had the experience. To use the example of two soldiers in a foxhole experiencing the same firefight, one of them may walk away from that firefight with no trauma whatsoever. The other one may be severely encumbered by a trauma. Same experience, same circumstances, same environment, but the only difference is the condition of the two people that are participating in that experience. Uh, we are obligated to make this decision of I like it or I don't like it. And we don't use a checklist of approval. I should like this experience because of X, Y, and Z, or I shouldn't like it because of X, Y, and Z. Is predicated purely upon how we feel at the time that we have the experience. When an experience challenges our perception of self, our identity, to an extreme, to such a degree that we are unable to make that decision of whether I like it or don't like it, that thought, for that one moment, sends us into the condition of shock. And you may have seen people on television, if not personally experienced, after, for example, a hurricane or a tornado, and their house has been destroyed and the family distributed around, and they're wandering around just in a daze. They're determined to be in the condition of shock, which is nothing more than their awareness has left their body. The experience was so traumatic, their awareness has left the body. The same is true for an interpretation of a less dramatic experience, but notwithstanding a still significant experience. For the one or more thoughts in a perceived experience challenge the authenticity of our identities to such a degree that we're unable to adjudicate that one particular thought. When that happens, it leaves a gap in our flow of experience. And in order to heal that traumatic experience, it's necessary that you direct your awareness back to that particular moment, make the adjudication of whether it feels good or doesn't feel good, and complete the gap that has been left in your flow of experience. We perceive an experience to last some period of time, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, and that's comprised of dozens of thoughts. when we have one or more moments within that perceived experience that we've not been able to adjudicate, then our perception of the entire perceived experience is a traumatic event. So the healing of that requires that we direct our attention back to those individual moments, uh, finish the adjudication of the thought, and the entire traumatic interpretation is healed. It goes away. I've never had anybody, for the longest time, I didn't have anybody with more than four four moments within a perceived experience. Recently, I had a veteran with old traumas that had five, but that notwithstanding, clearing those five moments cleared the entire experience for him. Most people don't have more than one or two thoughts within a perceived experience that has made that whole perceived experience traumatic.
Okay. So the traumatic event, what you're saying is it results in a disconnection.
Yes.
That's the
But the
loss of
disconnection
awareness.
is the awareness leaving your body for that
Yeah.
moment.
A dissociation where the experience was too painful. And so the only thing that we could do was disconnect from it.
But the pain, understand that the pain was only a challenge to the authenticity of our identity. And our identity is an entity, it's a vehicle that we create with every reincarnation. It is unique to this particular experience that we are enjoying. We created it in order to attract the types of experiences that we need in order to learn to fulfill our curriculum requirements for the range of consciousness that we're currently experiencing.
Hmm. Okay. And so your technique for addressing trauma and healing trauma is to help people to return back to the present moment that was too painful at some point,
Hmm.
which required the disconnection. Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. We're very similar in that regard then. So, what led you to work with this, to work with trauma in this regard?
Well, interestingly, I was trained in some particular techniques. My spouse had some difficulties from earlier years, as well as I did. We all have traumas. I mean, you can get interpreting an event trauma if you don't eat and haven't slept for a day or two, and you're driving in heavy traffic. That conceivably could create a traumatic event for you if you're in a depressed condition. But I went to a seminar in 2008, or actually it was a training uh, um, program that Dr. Zibrad Slavinsky, a Serbian psychologist, was teaching. He came to the United States, and I attended this, learned how to do it. It was dramatically healing for myself as well as my spouse, and we undertook, and we had actually been trained in several other methodologies prior to this, but this was so much more effective than anything else that we encountered, including EMDR training, that we abandoned all of the other techniques and focused on these.
So, this was for healing your own personal traumas, is how you got involved with it.
Sure. So almost everybody becomes a therapist. Is
Sometimes, sometimes, yeah. What did it do for you when you started learning these techniques and you started addressing your own traumas? What happened? What was your end result, or what was the product of applying these techniques to your own experiences?
well, escalated awareness. The awareness, we exist within a range of consciousness. Um, the particular range of consciousness that we all share is tasked with first awakening, which is overcoming unconsciousness, which is part of the design of our experience, becoming aware, and eventually becoming awareness, which is a step beyond just becoming aware. And that is the necessary curriculum, along with several other items, for preparing us to do the work of the next range of consciousness. And so, what it entails is following the path of enlightenment, which is not a destination, it is the path itself. And in that process is actually a two-step process, two parallel steps. One is healing the emotional baggage, which is inclusive of the traumas that we may not have collected over the course of a lifetime. And the second is becoming aware of the beliefs that we've incorporated into this perception of self, into this identity, or you can call it a hierophant or an ego. It's all the same thing. There's no distinction. But it creates a mind. This identity creates a mind, an ego mind. And we use this ego mind to interpret our experiences. That becomes the lens that we use to interpret our experiences. It's necessary to heal the emotional baggage, which lessens the burden on our energy availability and allows us to fuel the awareness necessary to become aware of the beliefs that we've incorporated into this identity and begin to throw those out. And as we do that, then more of our authentic self emerges. And that is our objective through the whole course of the evolution of consciousness. We are in an elementary phase of that in our development, and there are necessary steps and necessary curriculums at each range of consciousness that we will experience, including the one that we're currently experiencing.
Hmm. So a development of your worldview.
Well, yeah, beyond worldview, the worldview I take or I interpret to mean the physicality of our experience.
Yeah,
But
or the
way
lens
beyond,
that you look at the world through, right? That's what you were talking about in the beginning is the early stages of developing your awareness is how you interpret the things around you.
in experiences, yeah.
Yeah.
And physicality is part of our experience. But as we evolve through the density, then the authenticity of physicality becomes significantly reduced.
What did this look like for you with your developing awareness and your development or expansion of consciousness? How did this take shape in your life? What did it look like?
Well, it caused a significant redirection of my behavior and activities,
What do you mean?
to say the least. I became aware of numerous things, not the least of which is the purpose of our participation in creation, which is synonymous with all consciousness. There's no consciousness that has a different purpose. But we have unique missions with each incarnation. And so my mission became more apparent, more clarified. I became aware of my my participation in creation up to this point, and um, uh, became pretty much aware, or more clearly aware of my mission for being here.
Which is what? What was your direction of action or creation before you started getting involved with this line? And then what did it change to or what did it develop into?
Well, prior to this line, I was pretty much unconscious, as most of the world still is. And that unconsciousness, again, is part of our design that we begin every lifetime um, as an unconscious entity. And it's incumbent upon us to awaken, which is nothing more than becoming aware that all the stuff that you've been doing up to that point has not provided you, it may have provided you with perceived success, but it hasn't provided you with any greater happiness. And happiness is the measure of how we're doing in our evolution. And
Mhm.
so all of the activities that I, business wise and personal wise and so forth, prior to this awakening, became unimportant. And my activities were dedicated towards a transformed perspective of myself and my interaction with the world around me.
Can you give me an example?
Well, prior to awakening, and this is not entirely an instantaneous thing. It's a migration of attitudes and perceptions. But I had a fairly successful business career. I developed commercial real estate
Mhm,
prior to this awakening, and afterwards, I haven't done anything really that would be conventionally considered um, business. My activities have been towards writing books and sharing what I have learned. I conduct 2 podcasts. I do one-on-one work with people that suffer from traumas. My um, whole uh, life has transformed from the first
mhm.
50 years.
So you were involved with commercial real estate, you were saying,
Uh
and you just let that go. What was that like for you to let something did you say you were doing that for 50 years?
Well, I was doing it for about 35 years. Yeah.
35 years. So 35 years of building a business, commercial real estate, and then to let it go. How long did it take? How long was the transition where you stepped away for that?
Oh, about 18 months.
18 months. So
Yeah.
35 years and then 18 months. That's a significantly quick turnaround time. What was that like for you?
Well, intermingled fear with greater happiness. It's kind of an
Yeah.
alternating path,
Yeah. Both two emotions are the same time fear and happiness.
and which is conceivably impossible, but it's not.
What were you afraid of?
uh, Failure that I was the step requires a transformation of hope to faith, and the distinction between you have hope that your new path is going to be worthwhile, is going to be successful, but you have no experience with making it successful. And so, if you metaphor that I use to make the comparison, assuming that you have a job and you get fired, or the company folds, or whatever, you lose your job, and so you know that you need another job, and so you begin to knock on doors in the hopes that a business has a job opening. And so you knock on one door and they say, yes, we have a job, and they interview you. And so that hope has some experience that begins to transform to faith. By the third interview, you know, not only do they have a job available, but they're interested in you fulfilling that role. And so you're no longer functioning under the aura of hope. Um, you have faith that you're going to be employed by this company after they go through all of this process of providing you with additional experience. So your transformation is essentially the same process. You have hope that what you perceive to be the new path for you, but you have no experience until you have some successes along the way. And part of that, a large part of that, is the self healing that is necessary for all of us to do, which is surrendering our perceptions, essentially surrendering our perceptions of separation. So, as we
Yeah.
do that, and you build faith and have the confidence to do the work that you're um expected to do.
Could you unpack what these specific successes would look like? What are they that would lead towards this faith hope dynamic?
Well, you don't, before you begin, you don't know. And I mean, it's entirely an unknown. But as you go through the process, then you simply become aware of your greater happiness. And my process included a fairly rigorous meditation practice. And through that meditation practice, I received great insights and great uh, information from um, metaphysically based teachers,
Mhm.
which is available to us all.
Okay. This sounds a lot like what Joseph Campbell would say in terms of follow your bliss,
Sure.
follow your path that leads to this bliss. So you're talking about this happiness and a connection.
Well, the bliss that is, following your happiness, following your bliss is doing what you like. And if you do what you like, then you're going to become proficient at what you like. And that, by virtue of your proficiency, will provide you with the resources that you need to live, survive, whatever. And it also creates or facilitates your happiness. It doesn't create your happiness, because happiness is not something that you get or give. It's something that you are. And so as you continue along the process of healing, then more of your authentic self emerges, and that authentic self is invariably happy.
Hmm. Yeah, I think bliss might be a little deeper than just happiness or what you like.
Well, bliss
Because
is our objective, and bliss is defined as perfect happiness. Bliss is the absence of stress. And we will, some point in our evolutionary future, achieve a condition of being of bliss where we no longer experience stress, but that's not how we learn. We learn by experiencing stress in this range of consciousness.
so is it the absence of stress or is it the ability to navigate stress in ways that are healthy and conducive to the outcome that you're looking for?
That's what we're doing now, but we're still experiencing stress because we learn by analogy. We learn by comparison and contrast. All of consciousness learns by comparison and contrast. And so we are still very much, because of our um, elementary stage in our evolutionary process, we're still very much relying upon experiencing what we don't like in order to know what we will like. And so we are not anywhere near the condition of being in a condition of bliss. That's several steps down the road, but it is our inevitable um, point of destination. So because we learn by comparison and contrast. We're designed to experience a lot of what we don't like. And it is incumbent upon us to become aware of that and to resolve those conditions that we create that perpetuate our experience of attracting what we don't like, until we can choose and experience what it is that we do like.
What do you think dictates what it is that we do like and what we don't like? So, if I'm thinking about a doctor, for instance, like a medical doctor, which I was somebody who was, going through medical school and very adamantly pursuing that path,
Mm-hmm.
I very much liked that path,
Mm-hmm.
but I liked it because it provided me with something.
Mm-hmm.
And when I really started to see why I was pursuing that path and the stress that was coming along with it, I saw pretty clearly that I was pursuing this thing that I liked for reasons that were not in line with what I was actually trying to get. I was actually playing out a form of past trauma, not being good enough,
Mm-hmm.
not being worthy. And if I'm a doctor, then I can be worthy, then I can be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a path that I very much liked at that
Right.
time. But then with what we might call more self-awareness or an increased consciousness or reconnecting to my authentic self, I realized why I was doing that. And the thing that I liked changed.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think it is that dictates for most people what they like versus what they dislike in terms of choosing what path they're pursuing and for creation of their life?
It depends on, understand that we simultaneously exist in both the physical world and the metaphysical world. Our metaphysical self is our enduring self. It is a consciousness pattern. It is not physical as we perceive, but it is very much a defined consciousness pattern. And that is what is actually evolving. It takes the elements that we learn by our multitude of incarnations and extracts from that what we have learned about the 5 inherent characteristics of the one infinite creator, which are awareness, love, wisdom, unity, and stillness in that order. What is preserved after our incarnation has nothing to do with all of the parchments or the physical world learning that we attend to while we are here. What is preserved is what we have learned about those 5 inherent characteristics. And that is what is determining our evolutionary advancement along the metaphysical evolutionary path. We begin every incarnation with where our metaphysical self is. So in this range of consciousness, there's a vast discrepancy between the lowest and the highest. To give you an example of how vast that range is, the lowest range of consciousness is called first density, and it essentially is inorganic matter, but it ranges from fire to what we perceive to be matter. In between are water and atmosphere, each becoming a little bit more complex in its diversity of consciousness capacity as it evolves through that range of consciousness. The second range of consciousness below us ranges from single-cell organisms all the way up through primates. And that's a huge range of capabilities, includes plants and all animals. And that's a huge range of discrepancy that is a good illustration of how vast a single range of consciousness is. We have that same vastness in our evolutionary process in what we're in the third range of consciousness, third density, within our range. So we have great ranges from those that are still on the elementary dimensions of the density, and those that are nearing preparation for graduation to the density above us are far in advance to those that are still in the elementary ranges. So what we like is determined by our perception of ourselves and our perception of our range of consciousness. What makes the consciousness ranges possible is free will. And we erroneously perceive free will to be the choice to turn right or to turn left. Free will is a distortion, but it is the perception of separation that from the Creator. And it is only because we perceive ourselves as autonomous beings and separate from each other that we have choices to turn right or to turn left. And so our processes are the sobering from the intoxication of the free will that we perceive ourselves to have and or to be. The more we surrender that perception of separation, the more aligned with unity that we become, because we break down those perceptions of separation. And again, in our range of consciousness, that relatively speaking is very elementary. But the free will is what really, surrendering of the free will perception of separation is actually what determines our degree of evolutionary advancement. So things that we consider to be desirable in observing another individual that has advanced along the enlightenment path, someone who is moral, ethical, has integrity, those words that we use become not things that we have been trained, but they become characteristics that we are, because our consideration of others becomes greatly enhanced because of this surrendering of the perception of separation. And so the things that we like become narrowed as we evolve through the range of consciousness. And you can define the representation of this identity essentially into three major categories. One, the more basic one, requires immediate gratification of our wants and desires. And children start at that, for the most part, start at that range of consciousness with each reincarnation. But those who have not, in their metaphysical self, evolved beyond that point, for the most part, will stay in that range of consciousness and slowly, as they surrender that free will intoxication, move towards the middle range, which I just define as the social range, when you become more considerate of others and you vacillate between immediate gratification and more social considerate of others until you eventually evolve fully into that social range and develop those characteristics that I was just referencing. Eventually, we will evolve into what I characterize as the basic. The basic is things like we perceive ourselves to be physical. We perceive ourselves to be a male or a female, or to the authenticity of the physical, to have certain physical characteristics. We surrender those as well. And we eventually will move within this range of consciousness very close to what our metaphysical self is when we are not incarnate. So it's a process, and it is demonstrated in our behavior and our capacities to interact with other people in the world around us.
We got a lot of information there. I mean, we just covered, multiple lifespans, information from each lifespan transcending each life. So there's some sort of field of information where each of these experiences are contributing to that, as being incarnated in a physical body, you have access to.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start to get into this idea of making choices in life and this illusion, or you called it the intoxication of free will.
Right.
If we're talking about the fundamental being choosing what you like and dislike, and then there's all of these illusions of free will, how does one make choices? And what stops people from actually being able to make choices?
Within this range of consciousness, one of the additional primary curriculum requirements for graduating to the next range of consciousness is making a decision of whether we are going to polarize service to others or service to self. We all are designed to create this hierophant, this identity. Those individuals who choose primarily through fear to enhance that identity are choosing the service to self path. And they will follow that path. The reason this is so important, they will follow that path for several layers of further consciousness development. They are choosing the path of separation from the Creator. And that's considered to be the indirect path in return to the Creator, because they will go only so far, and they will hit literally a brick wall, because you can't be in unity and in separation at the same time. So when they hit that brick wall, and this is by their choice, they will choose to go back and start the process all over again. And they would, from what is considered to be, are called the prime condition of primordial darkness, which simply means you don't know anything. You're absolutely a clean slate. And that's the state that we all began from. You, again, as consciousness, you go through the process. You still have the choice of choosing service to self again, but hopefully you'll choose the service to others path, which is the direct path back to the Creator, because it is the path of unity. Those choosing the service to self path are oftentimes disruptive to our range of consciousness, because we have enough energy available to us that it's worth their while. We're kind of like Goldilocks' porridge. We have enough energy for them to steal, but we don't have the enough smarts to know we're not supposed to give it away. So those choosing the path of separation are choosing to alienate themselves from our higher self, which is ourselves on a more advanced level. We exist in all dimensions simultaneously. But they supply us with a constant flow of energy that's called intelligent energy. And this intelligent energy at the lower ranges of consciousness are essential for us to sustain ourselves in our participation in creation. If we lose that or we segregated ourselves from that, we still have to have it, but we have to get it from some other source besides the higher self, because we've alienated ourselves from the higher self. And so we have to essentially steal it from our range of consciousness, because there's enough for them to steal and still sustain ourselves. But it's also, we're not smart enough to know we're not supposed to give it to them. And so it becomes a very competitive path, because you're competing not only with other aspects of creation, you're competing with every other individual that is enhancing that perception of separation. There's no unity involved whatsoever, other than on a transactional basis. In other words, you and I may decide, well, we're going to go raid this village, and we need the two of us to be successful to do it. But that's not a unity operation. That's a transactional operation. Those choosing the service to others path are surrendering our perception of autonomy and surrendering our perception of separation, so that we are actually integrating and becoming a single larger unit of consciousness. And that's called forming social memory complexes, where most of the higher beings that create us and create our experiences are an accumulation of what we perceive to be individuals into a larger single entity that functions as a social memory complex, that the individual participants, for some degree of time, still have some perceived autonomy, but as they evolve even further, all of that dissolves until eventually we become where we started, the one infinite creator without separation.
You said that people are choosing this separation.
Mm-hmm.
Why would somebody choose that?
Well, that's because of the intoxication, and it's also because of fear. You fear this. You understand that this identity that we create is who we think we are, and so if I surrender that, then I fear, who am I going to be? And so there's the fear of not being who you think you are. So you enhance that by building your walls and increasing your perceptions of separation.
Okay. This sounds like when I'm working with somebody who's navigating past trauma, they very frequently have patterns in their life that
Sure.
they're choosing. For instance, we might say, my sister-in-law does this thing that upsets me. And when we really start to break down why they get upset or they get angry about it, we find that there's these beliefs of unworthiness. So this person is doing this thing because they don't respect me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm choosing this perception that this person doesn't like me. But when we really break down this act of choosing, is there's actually no choice there in these situations. It's automatic. It's almost default. It's almost like there was something programmed in there. I guess an analogy would kind of be like in the movie The Matrix, if you've seen that.
Sure.
Where Neo is
The
constantly...
documentary.
Yeah, that's what they often say, right? Every step of the way, Neo is trying to make choices. And what he's realizing is that at each step, there actually is no choice there. All of these conditions have been laid out before him, and he doesn't have any way to actually navigate it until he gets he transcends those illusions
Right.
of choice, in which case then he has the consciousness to actually make the fundamental choice.
Which is the same process of healing that everyone goes through.
So this is exactly what we're talking about, is transcending this illusion of making choices and realizing the areas where we're not making choices, or perhaps where we had the ability to make choices, the choices that were being made were default out of adaptations to things like pain or fear or an inability to navigate the fear.
Right. Yeah, but that we learn by analogy. We learn by comparison and contrast. So we compare every new experience to our resume of experiences to date. So when we continually experience things that we don't like. The message is that what is it about us? And this is the trigger for the overcoming the unconsciousness, for the awakening.
So this is the trigger, you're saying. This is what this mechanism right here of this illusion of choice is, a catalyst that helps us to expand or develop our awareness or consciousness.
Sure, absolutely. All we're doing is exploring ourselves. We perceive that we can learn about other people. It's
Can you
okay.
hold on one
Sure,
second,
yeah,
Dean?
absolutely.
She's an older lady, and I'm a little worried about, something
I,
that might be urgent. Give me
I
1 second,
understand. I
Say.
understand. Take
Thank
care
you.
of nature.
Okay, I hear you. Oh, good job. Good, Gerardo. Come on. Hey, thanks. Come in. Come over here, okay? Come right through here. Well, thanks for your patience on that one.
Sure, absolutely.
She wasn't fibbing there. It was urgent.
Well, good, good. I'm glad that you took care of it then.
Yeah. That's something right there, isn't it? With, you know, these animals, what we're talking about in terms of transcending this physical identity. It almost sounds a lot like the teaching of seeing the other in yourself and seeing yourself in the other.
Mhm.
And, even with something as simple as my dog here, I see a lot of myself in her, and I see a lot of her inside of myself. And these can be fantastic teachings that help me to develop my understanding of myself and this world that I live in.
To understand the difference between someone who has not awakened and someone who has awakened. They both have awareness. Someone who is not awakened and is still trying to enhance and define success according to their identity, getting more from what they want from the world around them in the false perception that that's going to bring them happiness, has their awareness pointed outside of them. And I have to watch your reactions to my identity so that I can modify my identity to try to trick you to give me more of what I like. After the awakening, when we assume responsibility for our evolutionary path, that awareness becomes inverted. Same awareness, but it becomes inverted. So we begin to become aware of what it is that we have incorporated as part of our perception of self that is perpetuating our experience of stress. And that's the major difference between someone who is awakened and not awakened.
So this is an interesting dynamic in that sense of this connection between trauma and consciousness, these two areas that you really work with,
Hmm.
which is the end result of trauma is almost always a disconnection.
Right.
And here, this development of consciousness almost seems like, I don't want to say the cure, but the fundamental pillar that helps you to heal the trauma of disconnection.
Yeah, and the mechanisms that I've learned and that others use EMDR can be effective. It's not as effective as the Zivarad methodologies, but that notwithstanding, all of these methods, all that they do is focus awareness.
Hmm.
So the more effectively they can hone in and focus awareness on that moment that needs to be cured, the more effective it's going to be.
How would you help somebody to start to direct their awareness if they were trying to address past trauma or trying to, there's a part of them that realizes that they're off the rails, so to speak. They're in this illusion of identity that you're talking about, and they're pursuing the things that they think that they like externally.
Hmm.
And they're realizing that something's not quite right, and they're wanting to take initiative and to reclaim responsibility and autonomy in their life. How would you direct them, or what would you do to encourage them in the beginning stages to start to hone that awareness?
Well, first of all, they've got to reach that break point in their life where they're willing
Ah, the break point.
to break point. And when they realize when they have the awakening, and the awakening is just that realization that what I'm doing isn't working. I've got to do something else to find the happiness that I need, that I seek. And so, with the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And until they're ready to drink, there's nothing that you can do to
Hmm.
facilitate that, because they're functioning solely from that perception through that lens of that identity that they've created.
Right. So they have to really want it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So,
almost desperation, usually what it comes down to for most people. For me, it
sure.
wasn't desperation, but for most people that I work with, I tell people, when my meditation students, I tell them almost everybody comes to meditation running away from the stick, and the stick hurts. And so they're looking for meditation to cure the trauma that they're experiencing from the constant stick. And, I tell them to stay with it until you get to the point, and you'll go through all the mechanisms, the guided meditations and the bowls and the candles and all of the permission slips that make you think that you're a meditator, and you join the clubs that profess meditation. But if you stay with it, then one day you get a bite of the apple, and so your motivation transforms from running away from the stick to getting more of the apple, because the apple tastes really good.
Mm,
And so that's when you begin. You're off and running on your healing process.
hmm. So, in a sense, it sounds like you're talking about using meditation as a tool to further the disconnection. That seems like where we almost always start off with when we're trying to use the analogy of get away from the stick.
Right.
Yeah. So, the meditation a lot of the times can be used further as a tool to continue that disconnection. But it seems nice because now we're spiritual.
Well, yes, but what does meditation do? Meditation inwardly directs your awareness,
Yeah, it
and
can.
it's entirely up to you and how deep you allow that to go.
Yeah.
But the healing process requires that inversion of awareness inside of you, and so that's
Yeah.
why meditation is by far the methods that I use. They work so far, but the end result has to be uh, perpetual in your inwardly directed awareness.
What is your meditation practice or your techniques? What do they look like?
For
What do you
me,
do? Yeah.
well, at this point, I went through the process like everybody else did. I started listening to guided meditations until that became a distraction, and I didn't want that distraction anymore. And then I did the bowls, and the bowls, were nice, and they helped me make the transition. But what most people misunderstand about meditation, all of these practices including watching your breath, the Zen methods or whatever, are transition tools. They're just transitioning you from the village mentality into the guru cave mentality. All problems exist in the village. No problems exist in the guru's cave. So whatever transition that you need to experience in order to get into the guru's cave where you can begin to do the work is what you want to use at the time. My practice, I just sit down and I just do a couple little visualizations of balancing, chakra balancing, and then I'm where I want to be. But it's taken me years, to get to this point, and I wouldn't say that someone just starting off is going to have that ability. They may, but I would be surprised if they did.
Sure. Yeah, it's a practice. You have
Yeah,
to develop it.
right.
Very good, Dean. If somebody were getting started right now and they've hit that breaking point that you talked about, and they're trying to get started with some meditation, and it's proving very difficult. And I mean, here you just whoop. Here comes the wobbly legs of the senior lady. I'm glad that she found
But
her way back in. I was getting a little distracted with her knocking at the side door when the other door 10 feet away was open for her. But that's a part
she
of being
figured it out.
Yeah, that's a part of being a stubborn beagle, and she embraces it.
Well, good.
Yes, welcome back, Layla. So somebody who's getting started, they've hit that breaking point, and they're realizing that they really want to turn their attention inward, but these patterns of disconnection are so deeply entrenched. Maybe the mind is just so busy, and they're just trying their hardest just to identify the busy mind. What kind of advice would you have for somebody who's just getting started and they're really struggling with the early steps of developing a meditation practice?
Well, to start, that's the hardest thing to do, is to do it on a regular basis. I mean, if you can meditate for 5 minutes, then do 5 minutes. And before
Commitment.
you know it, that'll be 7 minutes, and then 10 minutes, and then 15 minutes. But you've got to do it with regularity, because you're retraining your whole, not just your mind, but your whole system, in order to invert this awareness and to begin to see some results. And
Yeah.
you don't have to meditate for 3 hours. If you meditate for 20 minutes a day, you can get great benefit out of that once you develop a practice.
hmm And so these programmings that they have, so let's say they start meditating and it's 5 minutes. Very frequently, there's this self-criticism, the evaluation of, well, I'm not doing it right, or I'm not doing it good enough.
Hmm.
And what would you say to somebody who's going through something along those lines?
How does it feel? If you feel better, do that. And you'll do that until it doesn't feel good anymore, and then you'll change to something else, usually with less distraction, usually with an easier transition tool. The you know if you want to go to a retreat, there's some tremendous 10-day retreats that they ask for a donation, but there's no requirement of payment. That S.K. Guinke has written a small book, and there are groups that around the country that regularly offer, the retreats if you want the intense version. If you just want to sit down and use a straight back chair, you don't have to fold your legs on the floor or anything of that nature. Just sit comfortably in a straight back chair. Don't lay down. That's called napping. That's different from meditation. And just begin. If you want to follow a guided meditation, I've got probably a dozen guided meditations that range everything from 10 minutes up to an hour. But that is not just mine. I mean, there are lots of good ones on YouTube that, if it works for you, then do it. But you just have to kind of experiment, which is what I did. I experimented around, and I figured out what worked for me and what didn't work for me. But you narrow down those choices. Again, it's that analogy process. and you determine what it is that you need and what you want to benefit from it.
So get started.
Get started. If
Be
there's a
consistent.
group, it's really beneficial to join a group in meditation because there is some
Mhm.
significant commonality of energies,
Yeah.
and you have people that you can resource, for guidance on your own meditation.
Get started and dedicate
Yeah,
to the practice. Be committed to it.
yeah,
And
and
it doesn't
change your
matter.
routine. I mean, just like
Mhm.
you change your routine to start an exercise routine. You
Yeah.
change your schedule to include a exercise in your daily activities, and you do the same thing with meditation.
Yeah. And just like with exercising, if I say I'm going to start running, if I can only run for 5 minutes, it doesn't make sense to say I'm going to run for 30 minutes at a time. I start with where I'm at and then I gradually increase. And that's exactly what you were saying with this
Exactly.
practice.
Yeah. You're building a muscle.
Hmm. Yeah. Very good. And yes, I agree with you that there's something about energetically, whatever it is, of doing the practice with other people can be very helpful. And of course, doing it on your own is very important as well.
Mhm.
Um, where can people find some of the information that you've been talking about, whether it's your meditations, your practice, or any of these other ones that you mentioned, these intensive retreats?
Well, I have a website that has all my links on it, and the initial Dean Dean Graves, all one word, .org, and it has links to the books that I've written, the podcasts that I do, as well as other reading resources and expedited healing processes for, the trauma release. And I do this all over the world. I mean, I can do it remotely, so you don't have to be local by any means. But there are very few people. I think the only other two people that I know that were practicing these methods in the U.S. are they may still be doing it, but they're older. But it's very uh, prolific in Eastern Europe and actually Russia. Russia was very receptive to the techniques.
Very good. I will make sure to link that in the description notes. And before we part ways, I mean, this has had lots of very important and perhaps inspirational nuggets here. But I'm wondering, is there any last message that you would want to leave for anybody who's listening?
Um, well, I like to conclude with a Mahatma Gandhi quote: "Be the change that you want to see in the world." And as you do that, then you not only become aware, but you become a model for others to emulate and to transform themselves, which includes all the things that we've been talking about: learning to meditate, learning to explore yourself. As you do, you become the light that you seek.
And there you have it. There's the age-old teaching that if you want to change the world, start with changing yourself.
That's right. It's all we can change.
That's right. And when we change as individuals, the world changes naturally and inevitably.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Dean, thank you so much for your time here. I'm really glad that we got to have this conversation and share this message. I really appreciated talking with you, and I'm going to go ahead and end the recording here.
Okay. It's been great. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.